Guten Morgen, it's Morgan. Welcome to Murder in the Morning. Get ready with me while I talk about a true crime story. Please hit that subscribe button and like this video. Today's story is going to be about Ronald Defeo Jr. So, backstory, his mother, Louise, she was known to be very pretty, very attractive. A lot of people said she could have been a model if she wanted to. And she met Ronald Defeo Sr. So we're gonna call Ronald Sr. Big Ronnie because he was very big and tall, and so people would call him Big Ronnie. And then we'll call Ronald Defeo Jr. Butch because he went by a lot of names growing up, but most of the time he went by Butch. So she met and fell in love with Big Ronnie. He was born and raised in Brooklyn. Her parents were not supportive of this relationship. They thought it would fizzle out, that it was just a phase. So when Louise ended up marrying Big Ronnie, they basically cut off all ties. They stopped talking to her and were just like, you're on your own, whatever. So they got married in 1951, and shortly after they got pregnant. And once they got pregnant, the family did a whole 180. You know how it's like the dads that are like, no, you can't have a dog, and then when they have the dog, they're like all cuddled up with it. So it was basically this. Once they had Butch, Ronald Defeo Jr., they were back with the family, back with Louise, and being a major part of the family. So Butch was born on September 26, 1951, and the family ended up buying them a house. So the house that the murders will take place is the house that her parents bought them. And Big Ronnie even gets a job working at his father-in-law's Buick car dealership. So Big Ronnie, we don't know if he was always like this or if it was just after he got married and after he started having kids, but he would go into rage mode kind of, and he would get very violent, and he was physically abusive to the children and to Louise. And since Butch was the oldest and even bore his name technically because they're both Ronald, he got picked on the most by his dad and the most physically abused. And Butch was also overweight in school when he was younger, and so he would get bullied in school. And when his dad found out that he was bullied in school, he was like, you need to stand up for yourself. You can't let this happen. You need to, be a man, take a stand. But if he tried to do that at home, he'd get more abused. So it only applied at school, but at home, you cannot stand up to me. Don't even think about it. Otherwise, he'd get more abused. So as he got older, like pre-teen, 12 to 14 years old, these fights between Big Ronnie and Butch were getting even worse, to the point where Big Ronnie was like, this is a problem. So if the abuser is like, this is too violent, then there's a problem, like a big problem. The parents end up sending Butch to a psychiatrist, but it didn't really do anything because Butch was just being passive aggressive and he wouldn't accept treatment. So he left with no progress whatsoever. And his parents, they didn't know what else to do. So they just bought him whatever he wanted. So if he was gonna get angry, if he was going to throw a fit, they would just be like, okay, what do you want? We'll buy it for you, because they were very financially stable. And so before he was 18, his dad bought him a $14,000 speedboat. Like, that's insane. That's crazy. And not a good way to teach your child, not to respect your elders or authority because his dad was abusing him, but you can't get away with anything you want. But Butch could, because he knew his parents were more scared of him. So there wasn't really anything they could do other than buy him whatever he wanted. By the time he was 17, he was kicked out of the school that he was attending, and he started using serious drugs. He said that he didn't like needles until he did heroin. So he started doing heroin, LSD, and speed. And one thing that he says is it made him lose weight really quick. So he was no longer that overweight, pudgy kid that he was growing up, but his behavior became more psychotic and he just wasn't doing well. He was already violent, but now he was having outbursts of being violent. One day he was out on a hunting trip with his friends. He takes a loaded rifle to one of his friends, someone he had known for years, and he points it at him. Face turns white and he eventually runs off. And when Butch sees him later, he's like, "Why did you run off? Why did you leave?" Acting like he had no idea what had just happened. Like, why are you acting like this? Why did you leave? As if he didn't just point a loaded gun at him. I think that's completely reasonable to stop wanting to be someone's friend because they pointed a gun at you, but you know, it's just me. So that's just an example of how he was, you know, kind of losing it in a way. So once he turned 18, he also got a job at his grandfather's Buick dealership. And he even says that he didn't have to, if he didn't want to show up, that was fine, and he would still get a paycheck. He didn't have to do any real work and he would still get paid. So it was a super easy gig, didn't have to do much at all. So these fights between him and his father were just getting worse and worse. But this one time, it was Big Ronnie and Luis having a fight, and Butch comes out again, 12 gauge shotgun, and points it at his father. And he looks at him and he says, "Leave that woman alone, I'm going to kill you." And he pulls the trigger, but the gun jams. Sorry to leave you on that little cliffhanger. The gun jams, and so he just stares nonchalantly at his father and walks away. I'd say that's attempted murder because he meant to kill him, but the gun jammed. So if the gun hadn't jammed, his father would have died that day. Insane. That's when he was 18. Many years go by, and then the weeks leading up to the murders, he is given $1,800 cash and $20,000 in checks to go deposit to the bank from the dealership. And he decides, nah, I just want the money. Even though he already has like this super chill job that he doesn't have to do anything, he gets whatever he wants. He's like, no, I'm gonna steal the money. So he and his friend say, hey, you pretend to rob me and we'll split the money. So 2 hours later, they go and back to the dealership and they say, hey, we were robbed. The cops come and he's basically just like, oh, I was robbed. What do you want me to do? Sorry I didn't come in right away. Anyway, so he's just like mad, whatever. And then he again says to his father, I'm gonna kill you. So that's basically like leading up to it. So Wednesday, November 14th, 1974 at 3-ish in the morning, Butch was the only person in his family who had his own room. 1, because he got whatever he wanted, and 2, because he was the oldest. All the other kids shared a room. So he took his .35 Marlin rifle from his closet and he went into his parents' room and he shot his father in the back. It went through his back to his kidneys and exiting through his chest. And then he shot him again in the back. And this time it went into his spine and then lodged in his neck. So both his father and mother are 43 years old. So then he goes on to his mother, Luis, and she had a few seconds to react. It says that she was like awoken, but he fired 2 shots into her body and shattered her rib cage and then collapsed her right lung. So even with these loud shots, because I heard one of the sources say that they're like, oh, maybe it was just like a bang bang, but no, this is like a very loud weapon. You would hear it. And the police even did a test and said that people heard it for blocks and blocks. But when the neighbors were questioned, they said no one heard it. So that is a little weird that nobody heard the actual shots and nobody woke up. So it is a little weird that nobody was awoken from this or got up and nobody left. So then he goes into his 2 younger brothers, John and Mark's room. So they have 2 beds, so he stood in between the beds and he went and shot each of the boys once. Mark was 12 years old and he laid motionless, and John, who was 9 years old, the bullet went into his spinal cord and severed it, causing him to start twitching. So Butch just stood there waiting. He just waited for his brother to stop twitching just to make sure that he was dead, because he didn't know that he had hit the spinal cord, so he thought that maybe he was alive, but no, he wasn't alive. So he just waited while his youngest brother twitched. He just waited for him to die. Horrible. So messed up. So after this, he goes over to his sister's rooms, and the sources said that his sister Allison kind of woke up a little bit and he shot her in the face, and she was 13 years old. And then he aimed the gun at his next sister. She was 18 years old, Dawn, and he was so close to her face that it basically just like blew off the whole left side of her face. So then 15 minutes later, it only took him 15 minutes to murder his entire family. He starts cleaning himself up. He showers, trims his beard, gets dressed in jeans and work boots. He collected all of the bloody clothing, the rifle, the murder weapon, and wrapped him in a pillowcase and headed out to the car. So the family dog was tied up outside, and he was barking violently in reaction to what was going on inside, which leads me to believe even more that people should have heard it, because the dog heard the gunshots, and that's obviously why he was reacting. And people did say that they heard the dog, but they didn't say that they heard the shots. So he drove through the suburbs of Brooklyn and disposed of the pillowcase with, all of the evidence into a storm drain. And then he went back to Long Island and went to work at 6 a.m., business as usual. So while he was there, he called home multiple times when his father didn't show up for work, because unlike Butch, Big Ronnie would go to work and he would show up. When his dad didn't show up, he was like, "That's so weird. That's not like him. I'm really worried. I've called home and no one's answering." So he gets bored and decides to leave at noon. And he calls up his girlfriend and he's like, "Hey, just want to let you know that I'm coming home early and we should hang out." And his girlfriend's like, "Okay, cool." So as he's going home, he passes by his friend Bobby and he tells him the same thing, that, "Hey, I've called home. There's cars in the driveway, but no one's opening the door. No one's answering." And he's like, "Do you want to hang out later?" And he's like, "Oh, Bobby says I'm going to go take a nap. And Butch says I'm going to go hang out with my girlfriend, but at 6 o'clock, let's meet up at the bar, Henry's." So when he goes to his girlfriend's house, he spends the afternoon drinking and doing heroin. And then he eventually does show up at the bar and he says to Bobby, like, "Hey, I'm just gonna have to go over to my house and break in or something. I'm gonna have to break a window to get in." And his friend says, "Do what you gotta do." A couple minutes later, he returns and he's freaking out and says, "Someone shot my mom and dad. You gotta help me." And so him and Bobby, another friend, and then some other people hop into Butch's car and they go to the house. His friend Bobby goes in through the front door, goes into the parents' room and sees his parents. Bobby sees Butch's parents laying there motionless. And so he goes back downstairs and they call the police, and Butch is just beside himself, crying, screaming, agonized, whatever. So the police show up and the police go and they see the parents, and then they see John and Mark, and they come down and they call like headquarters and say like, "Yeah, we have a problem here. We need people to come," because obviously they don't know if like anyone's still there or what happened. So when they go down and say like, "Yeah, more police are coming," Butch says, "Well, I have 2 sisters too." So they didn't even notice that the 2 daughters had also been murdered. So when the other police get there, they all go inside and they see everybody. And at the time, they can't tell where they were shot or how they died, because it's just a bloody mess. And so the fact that Butch said, "My mom and dad were shot," is sus, because even the police officers can't tell what happened. So as they're talking to Butch. They say like, who do you think could have done this? Like, what do you think happened? I mean, your family's dead. And he goes, oh, it was Louis Fellini, and he is a mafia hitman. So there's kind of like a rumor that his family was actually, like, his grandfather was actually in the mafia and the car dealership was just a front. So they did have like connections to the mafia, rumor wise. And so they said that, you know, the mafia has a grudge against his family from an argument from years ago, and that they were supposed to kill everyone, but like they didn't kill me. So he was acting like super scared, like the mafia is gonna come get me and they're gonna kill me. So he was actually under police protection for a little bit. The mob was like, we don't touch children, and they were pretty mad. And to his grandfather was like, you need to stop making up lies about our family. You're making us look bad. Stop. Also, the police thought that could be why people said that they didn't hear anything, because they thought if the mafia is involved, we don't want to be snitches, basically. So people could have said, yeah, we heard shots, but they just didn't want it on record, or they didn't actually tell anyone because they were scared. That's the only thing that makes sense to me, because they did attest. You could hear the gunshots, especially 8 gunshots. You would hear that. The police took him back and took his written statement, and he said that he stayed up, he was at home, and he stayed up till 2 a.m. watching a film, Castle Keep, on television, and then at 4 p.m. he walked past the upstairs bathroom and saw his brother's wheelchair in front of the door. So his brother had like broken his foot or something before that. So that just makes it even worse that not only are they children, but like he's literally injured and can't like defend himself or run if he wanted to because he's in a wheelchair. He also claimed that he heard a toilet flush and then he couldn't sleep, so he decided to go to work early, and then told him, you know, the rest, that he was trying to get in contact with his family the whole time and that he was really worried about them. So everything else like matched up with what actually happened, other than, you know, the whole murder part. He left that out. He then admitted to being a casual heroin user, and that he had set one of his dad's boats on fire for the insurance money. So even though his room had been looked at before they decided to do another search, they found some boxes that said Marlin rifles and a 22 and a 35. So at the time they didn't know that it was a 35 Marlin rifle that was the murder weapon, but they kept it just in case. So then his story began to crumble. He started saying, oh, it actually might have been from 2 to 3 a.m. that I was up. Then he said at 3:30 a.m. Louis Fellini held a revolver up to his head, woke him up, held a gun to his head, and there was another guy there, but he couldn't give a description of what the guy looked like, and that Fellini basically just led Butch from room to room, killing them. And then the police were like, oh, but I'm sure he made you kill at least one of them, you know, to secure that you wouldn't talk. And then he just ended up spilling and saying, it all started so fast. Once I got started, I couldn't stop. It went so fast. So he admitted to doing all the murders. The case ended up going to trial October 14th, 1975, almost a year later. So with his confession, he led them exactly to where he dropped off the evidence, and the rifle was ID'd to be his, the one that was used, the murder weapon. And then cross-examination, he said, did I kill him? I killed them all. Yes, sir, I killed them all in self-defense. And then he says later, as far as I'm concerned, if I didn't kill my family, they were going to kill me. And as far as I'm concerned, what I did was self-defense, and there's nothing wrong with it. When I got a gun in my hand, there's no doubt in my mind who I am. I am God. So his defense really went for insanity. They wanted the jury to think that he was insane and that he wasn't like in control. And so that's kind of, he said that that's the reason why he came up with so many different stories, because there's a lot of different versions. Even his friends are like, I won't believe anything you say at this point because you've already told me 9 different versions And those are all different than the ones you've told other people. So that was kind of their thing. They were like, okay, we're just gonna have him sound crazy. Like he doesn't remember who his mom is, because they show a picture of his mom and he's like, I don't know who that is. I've never seen her before. And they're like, okay, make up a bunch of different stories. But they were able to disprove this because since he cleaned up the scene, he got rid of the evidence, he created an alibi, this was all an admission of guilt. So if he didn't know what he was doing, then he wouldn't have cleaned up after himself. He wouldn't have showered and cleaned up the evidence and disposed of it, because that's proving that he knows what he did was wrong. Even if it's just by law, he knew that it was illegal to kill people. And so he was trying to cover up for it. So that proved that he was fully aware of his actions. So originally, November 19th, 1975, the jury vote came back 10-12. And then after reviewing the documents again, the two that were originally unconvinced, they weren't sure, they came back to a 12-0 vote on November 21st, 1975. So he was found guilty of all 6 counts of second-degree murder. 2 weeks later, he was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison on all 6 counts. So while in prison, and he says that he said this beforehand, but who knows, he came up with so many stories. His story that he stuck to kind of in the end was that his sister, Dawn, 18-year-old Dawn, this part is true, that she was in love with this boy and he moved to Florida, and so she wanted to move to be with him, but her parents wouldn't let her. And so the story is, Butch's story is that she basically came up to him and was like, hey, let's kill mom and dad. You know, you want them gone, I want them gone so I can go be with my boy. So let's kill them and, you know, I'll do it. But, you know, just give me your gun. I'll do it. Let's kill them and we're good. So when it came down to it, the dad woke up and was like, what are you doing? And she chickened out. And so Butch grabbed the gun and shot the dad, but then their mom was awake, so then Butch had to kill the mom, you know? And then he was like, well, this didn't really go as planned, and she said the same thing, and so they're like, okay, bye. So then he's like going to bed, and he like sees that all of his siblings are dead, and they're like, Dawn, what did you do? And she's like, I had to kill them. And he gets mad that she killed his siblings because he says that they all really banded together, that they were really close. And so he was mad that she killed his siblings, and so he tussled with her, and he was like, she was gonna kill me, so then he killed her. There was gunpowder found on her dress, but not on her hands. And if she had killed 4 people then with a gun, well, 3 people with a gun, then there would have been gunpowder on her hands. And since he was so close to her, it would make sense if some gunpowder went on her dress, especially if like he had touched her dress or something. But just being on her dress doesn't prove that she killed anyone. And if they had gotten into a tussle, a fight, like he said, her dress would have been like messed up, maybe had a rip in it. She would have had, you know, possibly skin under her fingernails. Her hair would have been messed up, you know, all of that stuff. But her dress was perfectly fine, perfect condition, and how close he was to her makes sense that some gunpowder would have gotten on her dress, because he literally like blew up her face with that gun. The only weird thing was, though, that with how messed up it all was, how close he got to her face, there was no blood on her headboard, which some people think proves his story that, you know, maybe he shot her and then moved her, and that's why there was no blood on her headboard. But the investigators say, the detectives say, that every single person was sleeping on their stomach when they were found, and that the forensics say that no one was moved afterward. So I think a lot of people think that's really weird that everyone was sleeping on their stomachs, but I think for the kids, at least, like they were 9, 12, and 13, I think that they very easily could have woken up and heard it, but were too scared and went under the covers to hide. You see that a lot in movies, but I feel like a very little kid would just be so scared knowing that they can't, especially the one that can't even walk, he uses a wheelchair, to just, you know, hide underneath the covers. That makes total sense. So he died, Butch died March 12th, 2021. They haven't released the cause of death. They just say like in connection to COVID, but I think it could have been, you know, a cover up or something. He died at 69 years old, and a lot of the psychiatrists say that he might have just created this story about Dawn killing them because he couldn't come to terms with the fact that he killed his 9, 12, and 13-year-old siblings. And so he had to create a story that she did it in order to cope, in order to live with it. And if he ever wanted to get parole, it's a lot better to say that he only killed his parents and then his sister in self-defense than to say he killed 3 children and his sister and his parents, you know. Yeah, there's a lot of other like conspiracies going on with this story. There's a movie about the hauntings that took place in his house afterward. So there's a lot more that you can learn about this case. So scary. He was 23 years old when he murdered his entire family, which for basically no reason at all, because he already had a sweet life financially. He could have anything he wanted, didn't have to show up to work. Literally straight chilling all the time if he wanted to be. But instead he decided to murder everyone. I mean, he did have a horrible upbringing, but then basically by 14 he had whatever he wanted, which is also bad. No structure is bad. Thanks for listening to this story. Let me know what I should talk about next week, and see you guys later. Bye.